thank you so much again for joining us, and it's a pleasure to have you as part of In the Studio.
Oh, thank you.
And maybe we can start talking about your work. And we prepared a few slides here of your work. Maybe we can go to the first one.
Okay.
Okay. So can you talk a little bit about this work?
Yeah, so this project, it's a large-scale installation piece that was inspired from, or it was inspired by my trips to visiting different archaeological sites in Mexico. So when I was a student in the graduate program at Yale, I went to like Oaxaca, and I went to Teotihuacan, and specifically in Oaxaca, I went to Monte Alban. I was learning a lot about Joseph and Annie Albers and how they went to Mexico to study different color palettes and the architectural sites of the pyramids and also textiles. So I was inspired by that to also travel to Monte Alban and create rubbings of different murals and pyramids. And during my time in Mexico, I also went to Palenque in Chiapas, and then Teotihuacan right outside of Mexico City. So all these different ancient sites really inspire me because of the scale and because there's murals located within the pyramids. So I wanted to kind of recreate that, or that same large scale effect with fabric. Oh, I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry, I was muted.
Okay.
That we see some of this work or this fabric behind you. Can we see a little bit of the work behind?
Yeah, I mean, oh yeah, so it's just kind of like layers of fabric, like silk and different like eyelash fabric, and then some drawings and paintings that I create with dyes. I've been working a lot with dyes lately. Some are natural pigments and some are synthetic, but I just really appreciate like the watercolor effect and how like watery it is in general, because it reminds me of like washing and like aura cleansing. So
great. Can we see the next slide, please?
Yeah, so this piece here is it's a smaller painting. It's found metal. I started working with metal during my graduate studies, and the reason why is because I mainly work with fabric, but I'm also interested in industrial settings and also like construction sites. And so I'm trying right now as an artist, trying to figure out how I can merge different industrial materials such as cement and metal, and then kind of incorporating fabric with it. So this here is like a study. It's probably like about like 12 by 12 inches. And I always like to think of like spaces that I traveled to or kind of see in my dreams or in my imagination. But this happens for me, I imagine this to be like an aqueduct, like from central Mexico, where I would visit my mom a lot and her family in Querétaro. So I was thinking about that.
It's not anywhere in our earlier conversations. You were telling me that this work also was one of your first works that you were experimenting with these forms. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Can we see the next one, please?
This here, it's a large scale painting or a mural that I painted inside of the Green Gallery at Yale School of Art. So it was like my first piece that I made for a presentation or for an exhibition at school. But I was looking through different books through Pablo Olguera's Librería Donceles project. So I led like a paper weaving project inside like the library in Chicago. And then during that experience, I started to also kind of collect my own books, because that was part of the project to for the audience or the general public to go and to view books and then take them home if they wanted to. So I was drawn to this book titled La Garrafa, and it was about sustaining and maintaining textiles. And it happened to be about textiles found in central Mexico, like Puebla. And I wanted to reference books, but also still think about textiles by incorporating paint and cement. So it was my first time painting with cement. And then it also worked as kind of as a glue. So at the bottom, you can see that there's like scraps of fabric, and there's also scraps of like advertisements and plastic bags. And so I kind of tucked them underneath the cement. And this was about, I want to say, like 10 feet tall by like 18 feet wide.
And it expanded to the floor. Am I seeing cement also in the floor, or is that just a reflection?
Yeah, that's a reflection. Yeah, eventually I like to, I think we talked about it before, but like,
yeah,
I kind of see this as like a quilt, that the entire piece as a quilt. So part of like the yellow section at the bottom right, like for me, like I imagine that color extending onto the floor or onto the wall for like a future exhibition, and seeing how like the painting can kind of overtake the white cube space.
It's beautiful. And also it's the painting like made out of natural dyes, because I know you've worked with flowers before, and we will see more of that in the next slides. But I wanted to ask you about the pigmentation of these yellowish and orange colors that I see here.
So it's a mix of acrylic paint, and then like the brown was acrylic paint, and then the yellow ochre color that was all like dry pigments that I mixed with water. So
yeah, these are really great. It's a shame that it was it's like a mural that you can't take with you, but you know, it's temporary, but it's quite beautiful.
Thank you.
Can we go to the next slide, please?
So this piece was more experimental for me, and I say that because well, like part of my background is an educator. So before I went to grad school, I was also teaching many different schools and locations. And I also was fortunate to be a resident artist at the Astor Gates Arts Incubator through the University of Chicago. And he gifted me the overhead projector. And I thought that was very special because it connects to my educational side. And then I wanted to incorporate the strength of an overhead projector, especially because it's technology that's kind of like more antique now. And then I started taking photographs a lot during grad school, and I visited my family in El Paso, Texas. So it's like a border town in Texas, and I would go to Texas, and then I would also walk to Mexico, to the border, cross the border, and then come back to the United States. But before I crossed the border, I went to a grocery store, and then there was like there was like a huge life-size scale of a Batman, a piñata. And I thought it was kind of funny how Batman is like a masculine, powerful, like superhero, always, fighting the bad people in the city. But I thought it was also kind of humorous how there was all the brightness that you see, like the colors, the blue and the yellow and the green, all of that was streamers from a piñata. So I thought it was kind of funny, and I wanted to share that with an audience, and I also wanted to incorporate some type of pedagogy, and again, like the strength of an overhead projector, and how it also relates to public art. So it's also a temporary piece, but it's kind of like nodding at murals and mosaics.
Where is this mural again? In El Paso?
So the photo was taken in El Paso. Yeah, it was taken at a grocery store in El Paso.
Yeah. Can we see the next slide, please? These are quite beautiful as well.
Thank you. So like kind of going back to like community and audiences, I have like about 12 years of experience teaching. So That's how I was sustaining myself for a long time, and still now as well. But when I was teaching more like full time, I was always collaborating with young people and painting a mural or sharing some type of textile techniques or painting techniques. And then once I went to grad school, all of that kind of went away, and it felt a little bit isolating, but also it was a good challenge because I learned how to work around the idea of making my work accessible. So I also, in my own personal practice, I make installation arts or artwork a lot and a lot of textile based projects like murals. So I started thinking about how to make it accessible. So I started cutting doors through my paintings. And it's kind of it's a fun space to be in right now, thinking space to be, because now I feel like I'm entering like architecture and how I can create environments or architectural spaces with fabric, but also kind of think about public art and seeing how far textiles can kind of navigate me through that idea.
Yeah, and I also think it's very interesting the way that you mix materials, like cement with ideas of fabric and transparencies, and we're gonna talk about water in a second, but I guess like I'm interested in the ways that you kind of merge all of these ideas together with this exhibition in particular, because you have an exhibition right now.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Yeah. Is this part of the exhibition? I think not this one, but we'll see a few images.
Yeah. Someone like that we'll look at some other images. That's part of the show that I have up now. It's at Tiger Strikes Asteroid.
Can we see the next slide, please?
Oh, so that's the back side of the painting. Okay, so that pattern that we see, like all the triangles, that's also inspired by like residential homes. So, part of my practice incorporates like a walking ritual, meaning that I go on many walks wherever I'm at, and I take photos like mainly with my iPhone. But there was someone in Texas who painted this similar pattern on their garage doors and also like on their cement walls. And what I thought, part of the reason why I was drawn to that was because it was handmade. I feel like usually when it comes to art, a lot of people aim for perfection, but I also appreciate the handmade a lot because it doesn't really aim for something to be precise or quite perfect. So I really appreciate that, and I wanted to recreate that same patterns. And then you could also see that there's like magenta and tones of pink and like purple and maybe some darker blues. That's all hibiscus flowers. So also when I was a resident artist at the University of Chicago, I was doing a lot of research on the African presence in Mexico. And one of the main ingredients that came from West Africans to Mexico was hibiscus. So I think that's pretty powerful, and one, because it's something in art history that isn't really talked about, but also it's quite fascinating how when you like dip the flower, the hibiscus flower, in water, it changes colors and it releases all these different tones depending on the temperature of the surface that you're working on. So I really I'm kind of in love with the hibiscus flower right now. So.
Yeah, and can we go back to the slide? I just wanted to see, because these images here kind of caught my eye. Can you talk a little bit more about these? I see like maybe like some oyas and like plates or some.
Yeah, so when I walked across the border, and I ended up in Juarez, Mexico, I was kind of just drifting around and taking photos. Part of the oyas that you're talking about, or like the plates, that was from like a very touristy shop. It's interesting for me because I'm so drawn to that type of store. And objects, but then also as I continued my walk in Mexico, I was also drawn to a lot of abandoned buildings. So like to the left of this painting, there's like there's a structure or like made up of windows. But I kind of just started playing around with more color like lime green and orange. But when I saw it in Mexico, it was mainly like gray and like white and like maybe some blues. So that's what I like about, or that's what I enjoy about being an artist as well, is that like I get the opportunity to kind of insert my own color palette as well.
Yeah. Can we see the next slide, please? The other one? Okay. So these are little paintings, 12 by 12 inches, I think.
Yeah, so they're on metal, on sheet metal. So this is also kind of referencing my trip to Mexico when I was a student, and I climbed a lot of different pyramids. And so when I was thinking about this work of art here, it was kind of I was kind of remembering the steps that I took to get to the tops of pyramids. And how sometimes I would sit and rest, or sometimes I would try to just run up to the top, just depending on my mood or the weather. But so each small painting for me is supposed to represent like a step, getting to the top, but also kind of trying to create this abstracted version of a pyramid. And mainly like a lot of the different marks and scratches on these smaller works are referencing textiles, because I usually aim to like study at libraries. When I go to Latin America or Mexico, I like to like spend a lot of time reading through books in English or in Spanish about textile history and different indigenous groups, or I try to meet with women or groups of people who are very knowledgeable on this topic or who create textiles. So again, like I'm kind of incorporating that research and memories onto the metal as paintings.
Yes. And we can go to the next slide so we can see more of these paintings.
Yeah, so here's one example. So it's kind of like it's supposed to represent like a weaving. So it's like it's enamel paint, which is like a melted version, or no, it's a more thicker version of aerosol paint. And then I was also working with like found grocery store advertisements from Pilsen, which is a neighborhood where I live in Chicago. But then there's also some like gray marks on the blue, on top of the blue, and I started working with like the Dremel tool, and it's a tool that's meant to like sand off like metal and paint and wood, but I kind of work with it as like a marker. So it's a pretty fun tool, and it's new in my practice.
We can go to the next one, please. Thank you.
And then this is also like another version of a weaving, and you know, like the more that I study textiles or like weaving, you know, the more I want to rebel against it in a playful manner. Like usually, like when it comes to weaving, like you have to really follow like a strict path or a strict rule to get a certain stripe or color down. And I know I appreciate that, and you know I admire people who really are dedicated to that, but because it's conserving culture. But also I like to play around when it comes to me working with my hands and paint and different materials. So this is like an abstract version of what a textile is, and imagining what like threads would it look like if they kind of like rebelled against the loom. But
and also thinking about it like as another language, you know, and how also we can rebel against languages or expand languages, because you know weaving is another type of language. Can we see the next one, please?
So this is also an experiment, and it's like newer for me to work with. And I say that because I started painting with acid dyes on top of silk. So the silk shirt comes from like a thrift store, and then I created a frame in the wood shop, and then I just stretched over like the silk shirt on top of the frame, and I started painting on it. So it's again like it's kind of like it's referencing like textiles, but also different like graffiti marks that I see when I'm walking in streets. Like I love marks on the street, and I love public art and graffiti. So it's kind of like me like honoring that, but also kind of thinking about like creating my own alphabet or my own language with textile techniques.
Mm-hmm. Can we see the next one, please? And this one is quite different from the rest of your works. I think this is referencing to somewhere specifically in conversations that we were talking about. I don't know if this is the border or something.
So like once upon a time, like I went to El Salvador to work with a group of women through an arts and human rights program. And it, like there's a lot of history in El Salvador, a lot of war history,
Mm-hmm.
and that isn't really covered. But I wanted to go there because I had a professor who I worked with in California, like in 2008. But she invited me to work with her and her team on a textile project. So during that time, I was teaching a group of women how to paint on textiles, and they were teaching me how to embroider. But also during my downtime, I would walk around and take photographs. And this painting here in particular, it's supposed to be referencing a wall, like
Okay.
a residential wall.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just really drawn to the stripes and the fact that the wall was super tall. But then again, and in my own studio, I kind of started playing around with the colors more and kind of started switching some to my own kind of like imagination. So this painting's it's like 9 feet tall and it's like 3 feet wide. And I would like to continue making more of these paintings at the scale. That are also referencing like architectural sites.
Mm-hmm. And it's also fabric, or is it?
Yeah, it's cotton fabric,
Mm-hmm.
and I painted on top of it with like gesso and like lava gel, which is like
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of like a gel that's mixed with rocks, and then you can blend it in with different colors.
Waiting. Can we see the next slide, please?
So this is a photograph that I took with my iPhone. Some of my newer works now, I'm trying to create like a series of wooden panels that are inspired by different types of geometry on the street.
Mm-hmm.
So this is in Little Village in Chicago. It's another neighborhood um, that's predominantly Mexican. And the reason why I'm drawn to this wall is because there was graffiti underneath like the gray and the white and the different patches that we see on the walls. But I think for me, when I see these types of marks, they kind of remind me of again like maybe like another dialogue that's happening, but it doesn't really get a chance to exist, I guess, because if you think about it, there's like a graffiti writer that's writing on the wall, and then either the city, like the local government, or the establishment's owner doesn't like it, so they go over it with whatever paint that they have, and then you kind of end up getting this type of aesthetic where it's like
Mm-hmm.
covered up graffiti, but then there's also like a different layer of politics. And to me, I find it fascinating, and so I'm trying to honor that mark making, that's collective in a sense, to create my own version of a painting. So.
And we can see in the next slide the outline that you made with your phone.
Yeah, so I usually like take photos and then I share
Mm-hmm.
it on Instagram because
Mm-hmm.
it's easy for me to share my perspectives with people, and then I highlight it, and then once I highlight it, I end up constructing the panel. So
We can see the next slide. This is the
so
finished
that's
work, or?
yeah, that's the finished version or the finished painting. So it's again, it's inspired by the mark that we saw that's highlighted, and then I paint on it. I paint on top of the wooden panel with like acrylic paint and cement.
Can we see the next slide, please? Thank you.
So this is also, it falls within that same idea of what I just talked about, like where like I walk around or I sit down and have coffee or something and I take photographs. And then this painting here, it's on a stretcher bar. And then, but it's all fabric. It's like cotton and industrial tulle, and then thread and paint and fiber paste. So fiber paste is like a kind of like a gel medium, but part of the base is paper. And then so it gives it kind of like a paper feeling once it dries. But it's, it gives me an opportunity to create more texture.
Next slide, please. This is a detail of the work.
Yes.
Beautiful. Can we see the next one, please?
So this piece here, it's at Tiger Strikes Asteroid, and it's a 9-foot by 18-foot installation piece that's also referencing architecture. The title of this one is What the Cards Say, and the reason why I titled it that is because I kind of see each panel as like a building block, or also kind of like as a card. And I just kind of love the idea of how life is all about chance and intuition. So I kind of started to work a lot with dyes on a heat press, which is an industrial machine. And then I also, like all the black and the gray, that's all like hand painted with different tools for like cement building or brick building. And then I also washed a lot of that material, which is like the fiber paste and like the lava gel. Once that dries, I wash it, or like I wash over it with a sponge and paint. During quarantine, especially when it started, I've been thinking a lot about like time and like what it even means anymore. And I also been thinking a lot about like cleaning or like getting rid of things, and then washing a lot. So that was one way of me kind of expressing that idea. But again, you'll see that there's like a door there, and the reason why it's because I really want, or I'm aiming for people to kind of like interact with painting, because usually when it comes, painting, there's a lot of history to painting, and the idea of who was painted or who got to paint. I'm trying to kind of like rebel against those ideas, but also include people like the audience to be able to view a painting or a work of art from both sides or from various sides.
Also, I don't know if it's meant to be, or it's, but if I were to walk into this room, I would feel like, this, I guess, like limpia, or a new way of like, I don't know, experiencing, because I see all these transparencies, and it gives me this idea of the liquidy, or yeah. Can we see the next one?
So then this is a backside of that same painting that we looked at. And it's more transparent fabric. So it's mainly like, it's like silk chiffon or like industrial tulle. And then what was interesting or different for me for this piece was that on the first side that we looked at, when you look at, okay, how can I explain it? So I painted the front side, but then you can still see the fabric on the other side, and it was mainly like gesso marks and dried up like white or gray paint. So I ended up also painting the back side, and then on this side of the perspective that we're looking at now, I had started to layer the different like translucent fabrics. So it's, I kind of, what I really love about translucent textiles is the fact that there is an opportunity to kind of, not to trick people, but to kind of like, to think about perspective, but also to think about like how languages can be created if you layer paint and continue to layer fabric on top of each other. Right now I'm really into the idea of language, because I feel like so many things are shifting and changing. And there's like new vocabularies that are being created and new systems that are being created. So I think fabric has a lot of potential in that.
Mm-hmm.
And also thinking about painting, again, like the history of painting and how textiles for like many, many years throughout history has been thought about as a craft, or like only a woman gets to do it. And, you know, I don't think that's entirely true. Because if you think about it as well, a master painting wouldn't be able to exist without fabric, without like linen
Right.
or cotton or canvas.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. Can we see the next slides? And maybe we can pass them through quickly, because I think, well, I wanna have time to discuss the other works as well. So this is the installation
yeah.
at the exhibition. Okay. Okay, we can stop there.
So bricks have also been quite fascinating for me, for a few reasons. Well, I think that they're super powerful, like small objects that exist, and they relate to a lot of different parts of history. But in terms of like architecture as well, like there's a lot of murals that are painted on top of on bricks in general. And I happen to live across the street from a park. It's called Dvorak Park, and there there was a mural that was painted by an artist called, his name is, he's still alive, his name is Ray Patlan, and he painted a mural with many people, like maybe in the 60s. And then I feel like Pilsen, where I live, it's like people love murals, and it's like there's a lot of history behind murals and a lot of like different like political views that relate to certain murals. Not all murals, but certain murals. And then, well, the city kind of like just knocked over this wall that had this painting on it. So, I thought it was unfortunate because it meant a lot, and there was a lot of like significance behind that painting. And so I went to that site and I started to collect different bricks, and then was bringing them to my apartment and to my studio, and started to kind of layer like fabric and paint on top of it. Because part of me wants to like honor the bricks, but then also during that process of kind of experimenting, I started to think about what if bricks can be made out of fabric, or what if I continue to kind of like layer different materials on bricks and create my own public art project without having it be a mural.
Mm.
So this is one brick.
Yeah. Can we see the next one?
And then this is another brick that I collected. Well, this brick was collected from back of the yard. So there's like this company, or like a big factory that's full of bricks there. And I think in general there's a lot of bricks in Chicago as well as in different cities. But what is interesting about this company is that a lot of the people working in there are super knowledgeable about different bricks. Like I think this one is from Detroit. The brick, or the style of it is a Detroit brick. And then it just makes me think about visiting more cities, and also kind of learning more about the history of bricks and how, or like what type of structures these bricks were made for, or who had access to them. But the person who I met at this company gifted me a few amounts of bricks. So then I brought them to my studio, and then I started to layer like pantyhose on top of it, because I'm also thinking about how when I think of bricks, it's normally like, oh, it's usually like men or who are building with it. But then as a woman, I start to think about how I can like flirt with the idea of like being seductive with a brick, but through painting and fabric. So I started working with pantyhose. So
Can we see the next one? This one is pretty interesting as well.
Thank you. So this is also pantyhose,
Mm-hmm.
and then that I stretched from the bottom to the top, which is like the black fabric that you see, and then the top is it's silk chiffon as well. And then what I did with the stripes was I worked with the heat press, which is again it's an industrial machine, but I use like flocking or like it's called flocking, but it's kind of pretty much like a sticker that you can cut shapes, and then you just adhere it together with the heat of the heat press.
Mm-hmm. Can we see the next one?
Yeah. And then this is another brick that also came from the mural. So part of it has the painting on it still, but then I kind of started wrapping it with more pantyhose, and then I started also working with enamel paint and some of the fiber paste. So these are all, they're kind of like sketches, but also they're experiments, and I'm going to continue to make them so then I can build structures and then also play around with maps.
Mm-hmm. Can we see the next one?
So this is another painting or another brick that came from the Dvorak Park site, and I didn't want to get rid of the painting that already exists on the brick. So that's why I like to play around with the translucent material to kind of wrap it over, and then to create like a hybrid version of my vision, but also, or to create a hybrid version of a version of my vision with history that already exists.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think the next one is the same brick, but with another orientation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can we see the next one?
So this is more like more experimenting. I think a large part of my practice is to explore and play in the studio as much as I can. But this brick probably took me like 3 weeks to paint because I was very slow with like adding the layers of the colors and kind of playing around with the geometry of the brick. And these are two bricks in one, so they're kind of stuck together. It kind of reminds me of like a couple.
Mm. Can we see the next one, please? Okay. And this is again, I guess, playing around with the idea of time. These are like calendars.
Yeah. So earlier in our conversation, I talked about like quarantine and like the concept of time and how like days seem to blur and things didn't really matter anymore because I didn't know when things would go back to normal or if they are, or I don't know. So I started thinking about time a lot, and I cut this piece of sheet metal into like a small square, and then I created like the grid system on top of it as well, because when I look at my calendar in my kitchen or in my studio, like the calendars are usually squares, and there's like the grid kind of determining the different dates and stuff. But I also think about painting a lot and like murals and how the grid system is super important to public art. And again, how like usually in each little box that you see like a certain portion of the painting is supposed to exist. And I kind of like to think about it like, well, like what about if you had the opportunity to just wash it all away, or kind of like just not, or break that rule, So I enjoy these small studies because it inspires me to make bigger works of art, but also if you can see like the green, the purple, and the magenta, that's all that material is silk chiffon, and I painted on top of it with dyes, but it came from like the scrap materials from the larger painting with the doorway. And for me, it's kind of like referencing like landscapes as well. So it brings me some type of peace when I'm working on these
Mm-hmm.
projects. And, you know, I look forward to making them bigger.
Yeah. I like the next one because, and if we can go to the, it looks like a window, and you can see like this mountain or this water.
Yeah. I'm happy that you said that. That it reminds you of a window.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if it's because I'm in Puerto Rico right now, but there's a place called Cueva Ventana where it's like a cave, and you go and you walk, for a few minutes, and then you walk into this like huge, I mean, ventana, a window. It's not quite a window, but it's like visually, it's like it looks like that. I will send you a picture later.
Okay,
Over
yeah,
text message, yeah.
that'd be awesome.
But yeah, it just makes me think about that.
Cool.
Can we see the next one, please? Yeah. And this one
Yes.
is again referencing the transparency in water.
Yeah, and water, but it's also, I feel like there's some fluidity to this. So, and like it starts to remind me of like body parts and,
Right, yeah.
or like legs, you know,
Yeah.
and so I really also enjoy how like the grid in this painting, it's like a off-white, and once I painted it on top of on the metal, it kind of aged it quickly, or like it turned it yellow. So it's something about the chemistry behind like the metal and the paint that made it age. And I really love that because I think there's so much beauty to like decay and
Right.
to layers. So I'm happy that happened.
Yeah. Especially if you say that, it references also like body parts. It makes a lot of sense
Yeah.
that it behaved that way,
Yeah.
Yeah. So can we get to the next one? We have about 10 minutes, so I want to have,
Okay.
I want to have time to discuss these other works which are kind of like maps also.
Yeah, they're maps. So I'll try to be super brief.
Mhm.
I started studying the Situationist International when I was in grad school, and it was a group of European artists who were rebelling against like politics and kind of creating their own versions of art. For example, like they would create playgrounds in former like war zones in Russia, or they would create a lot of posters. And then they started making maps. They started studying like Paris, and I was super drawn to this specific map about an exploded Paris. So like the idea of like recreating and reimagining a system or like a cityscape or a landscape in general. And I kind of was inspired by that map, and I started creating my own versions of like a fragmented. This, for example, is like a pyramid. This is the Sun Pyramid in Teotihuacan. And I took photographs of the pyramid, and then I printed the photo, and I started ripping it apart, and then that's how the fragments ended up being part of these prints, or this print in this map. And then there's like maybe four more maps that are in the slideshow, but I don't know if you want to move to that one.
Yeah, let's go to the next one, please.
Yeah, so now that I'm making again in the print shop, I really like the map idea. And so I've been taking photographs of like walls, like different industrial walls, or like Lake Michigan, or body parts, or like watermelons or produce, because I really love grocery stores, and I don't know, I just find that there's some sense of community in the grocery store as well. So the maps are pretty much referencing like the Situationist International. It's referencing different objects that I'm drawn to, and then it's also like some of the text. It's all in Spanish because I want to start incorporating that language more into my work. But it's also honoring different Aztec goddesses that are like dedicated to fertility or rebirth or architecture and crops. And the reason why I have a desire to research different indigenous goddesses is because they're not included in art history or in contemporary art as much as I like to know about it. So I think it's a way of honoring this type of history and then also including it in contemporary work.
Yeah. Can we see the next one?
So this is Lake Michigan. I took photos. I went for a walk, or I rode my bike to Lake Michigan, and then I started taking photographs of different parts of the lake, and then I print the images, and then I crumble it sometimes to create more texture. So that I don't aim for perfection in my work, so I kind of want it to look aged. So it's one way of achieving that aesthetic. Crumbling paper and then printing it. So.
Yeah. Can we see the next one, please?
And then this is watermelons.
I love this one.
Thank you. Is it the colors or like?
No, I think it's the colors, and also I don't know. I like sandia.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. Like I feel like watermelon or sandias, like they're it relates to so many different cultures. And it's also referenced in a lot of paintings. So it's kind of me trying to attempt to kind of create like a whole different perspective of what a watermelon is.
It's nice. And then this is the last one.
Yeah, this is body parts, So like
yes.
I kind of I think it's somewhat humorous because it looks like a face or like a fragmented face, but it's also kind of like like a lot of my work is abstract, so I'm trying to figure out ways of bringing in the figure into my work as well. So this is an experiment of that.
I also like how it looks like mountains. Again, this idea of things looking like landscapes. I don't know.
Yeah, I like that, because it's fun, and it's also like bodies are everywhere, and it's it doesn't have to be a human body. It's we can also see it in nature. So
yeah. So we have a few minutes. I don't know if anyone has a question or if you want to share with us a little bit more about the exhibition that you have up. I think you have 2 shows up right now, right?
Well, I have one show. It's a solo show at Tiger Strikes Asteroid in Chicago, and then I have an upcoming solo show at the San Jose Museum of Quilts and Textiles. But that's not going to happen until January 2022. So right now I'm like thinking of or sketching out ideas and starting to work again, so I can be ready for that show. And I think I'm gonna aim to paint all the walls I'm going to try to wash the walls with paint, and then create more like double-sided paintings so people can walk through these different environments.
Yeah. I'm looking at the comments. Eva said that the mural is forever at Yale now, so we can visit.
Oh, I wish it was there forever.
I was kind of hoping that would be true. Yeah. Yeah, maybe someone here wants to commission Victor.
I would love to.
Yeah. Well, Victoria, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to be in conversation with you. I hope I get to see your work when everything gets back to quote unquote normal.
Yeah.
But it's great. I love the work, and I wish I could experience it, and go through one of your little doorways.
Yeah, I mean, like maybe if things get better, like in January, you can visit California, and then I also I have more shows coming up. But yeah, I mean, I'd love to meet you in person, and I thank you for your time and for the conversation.
Yeah. And come to New York also.
I will.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good day.